Manchester United have just signed Marcel Sabitzer from Bayern Munich on deadline day, and it's a very, very important loan signing till the end of the season, as Christian Eriksen has just been ruled out for 3 months. In this video, we're going to analyze the differences and similarities between Eriksen and Sabitzer to show you exactly why Sabitzer is the perfect addition to Erik Ten Hag's squad and how he's actually better than Eriksen in some ways. Before we get into the analysis, please drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel to never miss out on content just like this. Now we're going to start things by looking at the current shape that Man United use under Erik Ten Hag, because we need to understand exactly what Eriksen brings to the table before we can understand where Sabitzer will fit in. Erik Ten Hag currently starts in a 4-2-3-1 formation, but actually plays a 3-3-1-3 in possession that looks like this. In this shape, you have Weghorst, who's the central striker, occupying the two opposing center backs. The wingers playing high and wide on the touchline, providing most of the width. Fernandez actually playing in the hole in behind in a very important role because he tends to drift on the ball side and try to help link up play as needed. Then we have Casemiro, Shaw, and Wan-Bissaka, so the holding midfielder and the two fullbacks forming the midfield three. And the fullbacks are tasked with either overlapping on the wings or underlapping on the inside spaces. So Shaw and Wan-Bissaka are doing that. And then we come to the role of Eriksen. Eriksen drops into the center back role to either start the attacks as a quarterback or link up play as needed. And what's interesting is when Ten Hag plays with two right-sided center backs starting, so if it's Lindelof and Maguire or Lindelof and Varane, then the right-sided center back tends to play more centrally and Eriksen plays as the left center back because Eriksen's good with both feet. In the other scenario, when he starts with a left-sided center back, Eriksen tends to play either centrally or on the left-hand side. Whether he plays as the left of three or the center of three in the 3-3-1-3 formation, Ten Hag uses Eriksen's game intelligence and passing abilities to fill two specific roles. The first one is that he can be the quarterback, finding wingers with long balls on both sides when there's room to run in behind. Now this often happens in counterattacking situations versus low blocks, so when the teams are pushed up and there's room to run in behind for Rashford or Antony, or it happens in situations when we play against big teams like Man City or Liverpool who tend to hold a high line, so there's room in behind for these wingers to run onto. Now we have some stats from FBref to back up these claims, which compares Eriksen's performance over the last year to all midfielders in the top 5 leagues. So this should help us really paint a clear picture of Eriksen's strengths. Eriksen is in the top 5% of midfielders for long passes attempted per 90, and impressively he pulls off about 7-8 games successfully, which puts him in the top 12% of midfielders in Europe. Now some of you may be alarmed by the low completion percentage, but you have to realize most midfielders attempt fewer and easier long balls than Eriksen in every game. He basically tries the harder passes that are more dangerous for the opponent by playing in players in behind, so it's natural that it comes off less often. The second role that Ten Hag expects Eriksen to do is that of the link-up man, the guy who plays the 1-2s with any of the 7 players in front of him to progress the ball up the pitch and create goals for Manchester United. This role allows him to dominate the middle third of the pitch here because he knows exactly where these spaces are going to be at all times and how he should pass and move to move the ball up. And this is why you'll see Casemiro and Bruno make runs into the box from midfield, while Eriksen usually stays at the edge of the box or outside the box to play the passes. And again, we have some stats to back up these claims. Even though the volume of his short and medium passes are mediocre, Eriksen is a progressive passing monster. He completes over 5 progressive passes per 90, which puts him in the 88th percentile of all midfielders in Europe. And a progressive pass is basically any pass that moves the ball 10 yards up the pitch that's played from at least the middle third of the pitch. And when you look at other metrics related to progressing the ball into dangerous areas of the pitch, he's in the top 5, 10, or 15% of all midfielders in Europe. And this is especially true when you look at assists, key passes, and passes into the final third. So from our analysis so far, we can clearly see that Eriksen is the player that pulls the strings in midfield for Ten Hag by relying on his reading of the game and his passing abilities. The question is, can Marcel Sabitzer be our Christian Eriksen for the next 3 months? Well, not really. Sabitzer is a slightly different style of player, and what he doesn't have in passing and playmaking abilities, he makes up for in defensive and offensive contributions, and I'll explain how over the next few minutes. In the last 50 games, Sabitzer and Eriksen have both played CDM most often. Even though Eriksen has more appearances at CDM, he actually plays less like a traditional CDM than someone like Sabitzer. Let's bring some stats into the equation to understand this more conclusively. In every passing metric we just looked at for Eriksen, Sabitzer is much worse than him, whether that's long passing, progressive passes, assists, key passes, or passes into the final third or the penalty box. The story is very different when we look at Sabitzer's defensive stats per 90. He's in the 92nd percentile and above for tackles attempted and tackles won, but even more impressively, look at where he wins those tackles. 1.5 per game in the defensive third, which is top 7% of all midfielders in Europe, and 0.5 per game in the attacking third of the pitch, which is top 3% of all midfielders. This tells me he's great at pressing from the front to win the ball back and prevent counterattacks this way, and he's great at relieving pressure on the defense when United is defending deep. Now, a more underrated part of Sabitzer's game is his ability to get into dangerous positions off the ball and receive it high up the pitch, kind of like Casemiro. So he'll make these runs where he gets into the inside spaces at the edge of the box and inside the box, where maybe someone like Fernandes can actually play the quarterback role or play the role of Eriksen to link up the play and find him. And again, we have some stats to back this up, as he receives the ball more than twice per game inside the penalty box, and he's on the end of progressive passes more than 4 times a game. And when Sabitzer is actually inside the penalty box, he's incredibly dangerous as well, as indicated by his shooting stats. He takes over 2 shots a game, gets about 1 of them on target, and is reasonably dangerous with those shots as indicated by his XG numbers. Oh, and not to state the obvious, but Eriksen is relatively poor in all of the things that Sabitzer is good at, as you can see from the stats on the screen now. So with the stats and playstyle that we've just discussed, we know that Sabitzer can be a great box-to-box midfielder, while Eriksen is more of a playmaker. So how exactly will Ten Hag integrate Sabitzer into the team, and how will he account for the differences between the two players? In the 3-3-1-3 formation, Sabitzer will most likely not play the role of Eriksen, and this is not because he can't do it, but more because his skill set is probably better utilized elsewhere. He'll most likely play in the midfield 3 in the Casemiro role, where Martinez will drop to the left, Casemiro will play through the center, and Sabitzer will occupy this role. Now, Casemiro is more than capable of doing this, as he already did this from midfield against Bournemouth in the Premier League. And let's not forget, he started at center back against Burnley in the Carabao Cup when we didn't have enough starting center backs. Alternatively, he can play in the fullback role next to Casemiro in midfield, where Luke Shaw will drop into the center back role and Sabitzer will actually operate in the inside spaces, providing support to Rashford and getting forward when possible. For those of you that are doubting Luke Shaw's passing abilities, he is an elite passer, as you can see from the stats on your screen now, and Shaw has already been deployed at center back this season, so he's well used to it. In closing thoughts, I'm really excited about this signing because Sabitzer gives us something different while possessing some of the same qualities of Eriksen. Now, of course, Ten Hag might have different ideas for him and might use him exactly like he used Eriksen, but Sabitzer's playstyle and stats over the last year suggest that he'll be better as a box-to-box midfielder for United. I think he'll give United fewer assists than Eriksen, but some more goals to make up for it. My prediction is that he'll get at least 5 goals in all competitions by the end of the season, and maybe even more. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree with my assessment of Sabitzer and how many goals you think he'll get by the end of the season. As always, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.